Okay, so today we are going to be talking about diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. Okay, so these are the mode of transport for substances in living things themselves. Okay, so these are the three that you see on your screen: diffusion, osmosis, active transport. Okay, so diffusion and osmosis, they are known as passive transport simply because there's no expansion of energy. So which means to say that no energy is required, it happens naturally. Okay. Whereas for active transport, as the name suggests, active, it means energy is being required. Now, since diffusion and osmosis, they both do not require energy, what is the difference between the two of them? Okay, so for diffusion itself, it is whereby it is from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, and diffusion happens in all circumstances. So which means to say that we can talk about diffusion in terms of the perfume that you smell. Okay, we can talk about diffusion in terms of the garbage truck that you smell in the morning. Okay. We can talk about diffusion, for example, if let's say I put a bit of a dye into water, and after some time you can see that the entire water area has turned completely changed. Okay, so meaning if let's say I put a red dye, the entire solution will now be in a reddish shade. Okay, so why is it possible for diffusion to occur naturally? It's because it is from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. Okay, at the same time, the particles are able to vibrate according to each other. That means to say that they will be hitting each other in a random position. So since there are more particles at one region over here, okay, these particles, when they collide, they will eventually spread out throughout the entire region, resulting in the particles being evenly spaced out. Okay, so let me just write that down over here in this box. Okay, so moving on to here, so diffusion of liquids and gases. Diffusion can take place in both liquids and gases. So at the beginning, when we first started, I mentioning putting a red dye into the water solution. So when there is dye being placed into the water solution, it means to say that at the end, after some time, the solution will all change color. Okay, so we have got a higher concentration of dye at this junction, and thereafter this higher concentration of dye will then be spread throughout as the dye particles collide with the surrounding water molecules. Similarly, in diffusion, okay, bromine gas is a brownish shade at the bottom. Okay. So since bromine gas is a brownish shade, after some time it will diffuse throughout with the air particles. Okay. That is not to say that the air particles are not colliding at all. It is also not to say that the air particles, they are not moving. They are moving. In fact, they are colliding together with the bromine particles, resulting in an overall brownish shade. It just so happens that the air particles, they are colorless and we are not able to see them. Okay. So in both scenarios, what have we seen? We have seen that the particles are able to collide with each other, which means that they are spaced far apart to a certain extent. Okay. So which begs this question, does diffusion occur in all three states? Okay. So based on what we know so far, no, it does not. Okay. Why is that so? Because in the solid state, think about how solid particles are packed together. Okay, solid particles, they are packed very tightly and closely to each other, which means that they have very little space and very low kinetic energy, which is the energy required for movement. So therefore, they do not undergo diffusion. Okay, so think of this way. So for example, if I were to put a piece of cake on the table, does the piece of cake disintegrate after an hour and become pieces of cake all over the place? It does not. Okay, so let me write this down. The answer for this: do diffusion occur in all three states? Okay, so when does diffusion take place in living things? We know two main living things from the earlier chapter. Diffusion will take place in both plants and also in humans. Okay, so in plants, during photosynthesis, carbon dioxide will diffuse into the leaves. So we will be looking at photosynthesis at a later chapter. So you have got carbon dioxide diffusing in from the atmospheric air. Atmospheric air means the air surrounding the area of the leaves. Oxygen will also diffuse into the leaves at all times, and this is the process of respiration. Okay, so respiration and photosynthesis, they go hand in hand together as a chapter. So we will go through both of these later. Okay, so as for diffusion in humans takes place in terms of gaseous exchange. So right now, when you are sitting down listening to this tape and watching it, you are actually breathing. Okay, so when you are breathing, we all know that carbon dioxide is going to diffuse out of our lungs. Okay, and oxygen will be taken into the lungs itself, and then it will be diffused into our bloodstream. Okay. In addition, after the lunch or the breakfast that you ate, the food will be digested. So in order for us to utilize these food nutrients, they will then enter into the lumen, which is the area of the small intestine, and this happens by diffusion. Okay. So if diffusion is going to take place, there will be factors that affect the rate of diffusion. So in the morning, for example, if let's say it is a very hot day and a garbage truck goes past you, what you will realize is you actually smell the garbage smell much faster than if it is a cold day. Okay, so what are the factors that will affect diffusion? Will be things like temperature. Okay. So increase in temperature will increase the rate of diffusion. So why is that so? Is because you think in terms of kinetic energy and the particles. So when I have got an increase in temperature, this will lead to an increase in kinetic energy. Okay, so kinetic energy, recall, it is the energy required for movement. So because there is an increase in kinetic energy, there will be an increase in collision between the particles. Okay. So due to this increase in collision between the particles, I will therefore have an increase in diffusion rate. Okay. So that's for the first part. Now for the second part, mass of particles. So the smaller the particles, the faster the rate of diffusion. It's similar to, let's say for example, if I have got an athletic dog who is racing versus if I have got an obese dog who ate too much trying to race. The one that weighs lesser, okay, provided that all other conditions are the same, will definitely have a faster rate.